Welcome to Common Off the Shelf, a podcast for the modern Contra and preppers. We discuss items, books, and topics from a common man's perspective, and our opinions are our own. Do not take any of these as hard facts, only as our interpretation and understanding in a flawed world of amazing products, price gouging, and cheap crap. Your results may vary, and your needs may differ depending on where you live and what you know. So don't take this as a blanket endorsement for all people in every situation. Just like camouflage, your abilities and needs will vary. This is a conversation about hypotheticals and fiction with these items, and never is an endorsement of the owner, author, or any actions. Lastly, we are just common men and not experts in the fields. If we get it wrong, great, tell us. If there is something better, let us know. I can't believe I had to say this, but some of you window lickers made this necessary. Welcome all you Contras, American Partisan viewers. I'm going to have a nice evening tonight. I've actually got somebody talking with me instead of just me talking to you guys. Wisco Mando, or Mando Doey in the midsection, is on here tonight. I promised him I would give him a little grief, so he was working towards being a little bit of a slimmer, better fighter. And I've got X as well tonight. So, Mando, say hello to everybody.
Thank you for the large introduction.
X.
Hey, welcome back, friends. I think we got something good for you tonight.
While California is burning all to hell, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will be hearing about it from everybody else on the political spectrum and all that nonsense, and we've been talking about it, we're going to go in a different direction. We're going to talk about freezing to death and all the ways to prevent that. I went on a vacation this last week with my now fiance. She wanted to go see snow. I talked to NC Scout, asked him where we should go up in the North Carolina region, and we ended up near Boone and had a great time. She saw snow. The cats even came with us. They saw snow and hated it. I love snow for the skiing and other outdoor activities. It's fun. I absolutely hate living in it. I've been in it before. That said, I'm going to be drinking some Flat Rock from Cider Company. It's a semi-dry apple beverage from North Carolina, just for that funness. I'm going to start off, I'm going to have actual X talk about his little event that he had going on in his region of the world a little bit, because this also was part of the reason we went with this topic for tonight. I know a lot of you guys had the cold snap. I know that by the time all of us listen to this, it might be getting warmer, it might be getting colder, who knows. And not everything's cold all the time. But it's a good topic to think about, and since it's a seasonal thing, you don't always think about it. You're in the summer, you don't think, man, I should prep for the winter. And sometimes we make mistakes. And I'll say the first mistake I made up at this cabin, I redid all my gear, packed all my stuff, put my radios in. I took a Vigilante Engineering's new protective contraption to hold my 6100, took it out in the snow, and forgot every damn lighter, fire stick, ferro rod, because I had repacked everything. And I felt like an idiot. But I got around it, found matches out at the cabin, everything was good to go. So, X, please tell us a little bit about what's going on in your life.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, G. So, and Mando, good to see you again, bud. Basically, what we had happen here in the Mideast was municipal water supply, whether through mismanagement or through simple acts of God, acts of nature, we lost access to water. And I'll tell you what's interesting about that this time of year. You know, good snow, a couple inches, nothing too crazy like you'd see up there in the Wisco territories, but decent couple inches, nice snow. But, you know, there's really two, in my mind, I think this is where the topic should start. There's really two big concerns we've got when it comes to not field operations, but let's just talk everyday life to start. And that's power and that's water. And a lot of times people don't think about the second one. You know, the first one, yep, power goes out, bad storm. Hey, how do we prevent that? Well, maybe we get a generator. Maybe we get a fuel, extra fuel cans. Maybe we get fuel storage, you know, if we're really going to go hardcore on the prepper side of stuff for energy management. But little do we think that the water is going to stop. Even if the power goes out, the water still works typically, depending on what your situation is, whether you have a well. Unfortunately, I'm on county water, can't have a well here. And interestingly enough, I found out during the course of this event that my county actually draws water from a city reservoir. Had no idea. I thought the county managed it. I live very close to a water tower. I'm thinking, hey, I'll never have a problem with water. Well, the water stopped. Of course, something to consider in that situation. And G, you stop me anytime if you think of one of these topics you guys want to jump in on. But I tell you, the very first thing I did, living in my house, and not even worried about me or the animals, the very first thing I did was I turned off the breaker to my hot water heater. I don't know enough about them to know that they have an automatic shutoff. So in my mind, the first safety thing I could do is to go to the breaker box and turn the hot water heater off. And the reason why I did that is, if you think about it, those things have heating elements that are naturally trying to heat cold water that's coming into the system. If for some reason those things are not built to turn themselves off, it's going to burn those elements out. Whether it starts a fire, not sure, but it's absolutely going to ruin that unit. So that was my first move when this thing kicked off. Now, yeah,
That's a great. I think that was a great idea. I don't know if that's true or not, or if that changed anything. If there is a breaker shut off for that,
have no idea, but figured
it,
safer than sorry.
Great thought, Wisco. I know you're up in the frosty hell of the United States. What do you do about the cold, or prepping for the cold, or some situation where the power is out or your water is out?
Well, I'm really close to the river. I live very close to Mississippi, and there's a natural spring that's. I actually clocked it because I was wondering about that one time. It's about 10-minute walk. So if I needed to figure out some way to get a couple 5-gallon buckets on my shoulder, or if I had gas for my four-wheeler or whatever, I just drive over to the stream. I have several water filtration systems, and I bought the little electrolysis one that uses salt. I can't remember the name of it. I just got it. I was really excited about it.
Was
A
that the one I told you about for H2Go?
I'm not. I don't think so.
Is it
It's a different
square
one.
with a solar panel, or is it the MSR
Yes,
one? Okay,
it's that
so
one.
that's H2Go. And funny you should say that. When we were on our way back, I stopped at a military surplus store and ran across, hand to God, an MSR Miox machine, which is the same thing, but it uses 123A batteries. And I own the civilian version. The only difference is it's tan. Apparently, the Marines are getting rid of these now for whatever reason. Maybe they're going just to a pure filtration system like the MSR Guardian. I know they used to use one of the MSR products back in the day along with tablets and stuff like that. So maybe they're doing that. I think the H2Go is probably one of the best efficient things on the market. It is designed for 2 adults and 2 children to be used in Africa, South America, and they used to. I can't quote them now because I think they kind of changed hands to another company. Used to give discounts to missionaries going overseas, and they cut about 25% off the price, and also mass purchase of these 10 or more. Now, I think that may have gone away now, but if any of you preppers out there or communities are looking at something, turning salt into sodium hypochlorite, I wrote an article on it. We're not going to discuss it too deep right now, but that is phenomenal because you can get water, but you can still get sick from it. And God forbid, like what X was talking about, let's say he had a river right nearby and he goes and he gets water. Now, I know X is not retarded, that's why he's here. And he's probably smarter than I am. So I know he's got a way to take care of that water. But
Yeah, and that's another great point is, let's kind of take this in sequence, I guess. So, first action, make the house safe. We've had any sort of outage. I mean, let's just be honest. Water goes out, power goes out. Very first thing I do is secure the property. I make sure all my heads are accounted for, my animals, making sure that they're in secure, they're where they're supposed to be. I make sure that all my doors and stuff are locked. They stay that way, guys. It is what it is. But just to make sure I do my checks again, even in the middle of the day, I walk around and lay a hand on every single thing I need to touch to make sure that it's there and it's in proper sequence. And then for me, I unfortunately am in a very tough spot at this while I'm trying to move. Actually, I think we've talked about it some on this channel before, but I don't live close to fresh water at all. And I can't have a well. And if the water this was like worst case scenario for me. If the water goes out, I don't have the ability. Let me say it this way: clean water is the only thing I do not have the ability to produce on my property. So what I do to mitigate that, of course, is stockpile. Now, is my entire house stacked floor to ceiling with water bottles? No, I'm a human being that likes to live a somewhat normal life. Do I have a Connex box buried in the backyard with pallets of water? No, of course not. Do I have more in my house than the average person does? Guaranteed, that's probably the fact. To the point where, and I think this is important too, is we need to remember, guys and gals, that while it's important to take care of ourselves, we are absolutely our brother's keeper. And we need to be building good relationships with our neighbors. We need to be building good relationships in our communities, churches, etc., civil groups, whatever. And, if those folks need help, I've got several elderly neighbors, one of which is a widow. If she comes over and says, "Hey, do you have any water?" Absolutely, I'm going to take care of her. That is my obligation as a human being, as a fellow citizen. There's no question. Not only should I be prepared to take care of myself, but I really need to be thinking about having enough stuff to help at least some other people. What do you guys think about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, trying to build a community and having the ability, like knowing your neighbors. I don't know where you guys live, but I live in suburbia. So I know
Same here.
some of
Yeah.
my neighbors. I don't know all my neighbors. And you said something that was interesting because I have the opposite problem you do. You can't get water locally, but I can. I mean, it's a little bit of a walk,
Mm-hmm.
but I also live very close to the municipal pool. So
Oh,
if that's
nice.
got water in it, or I have the ability to plug it so that, if let's say things don't work, I could probably figure out how to get it to fill up with rainwater and snow.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Sure.
So I've got that capability. Plus, we get some snow. There's still snow on the ground, so I can filter that. I have multiple filters. I have a Grail. I've got one of the squeeze through ones. I can't remember what they're called.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a Katadyn, and then I have and so on the other side of that, the opposite of water's heat is fire. I
Yep.
have a wood stove.
Yeah.
So even if the power's out and the water's out, if I have some way to gather some water, I also have a Berkey, which
Yeah.
I'm not sure how effective those are, but
I've got an old one of
um,
those as well. Yep.
yeah. So then I have the ability to boil it, but I don't have any very close place to get firewood. So I do the same thing with the firewood that you were talking
Mm-hmm.
about with the water.
Yep.
Is I'm stacking the firewood, and luckily I have access to land and power tools. So right now I can do that and I can stack it up. And boy, I'll tell
Right.
you what, it's been cold up here, and I've been burning a lot of wood. We got home from Christmas vacation and started a fire, and it burned for 12 days straight before I let it kind of cook off so that I could
Wow.
clean out the ash. And so it got cold and warmed up, so I let it go out here yesterday again. So when we're talking about cold weather
Mm-hmm.
survival type stuff, that was the first thing I did. When we moved into this house, I sat down and talked to my wife, and I said these are the priorities, and she said that she wants something, but she understands getting these things set in place first. So the first thing we did was we installed a wood stove, and it's been awesome. Not only just I like wood, everybody likes, well, not everybody, most people like wood heat, but
Mm-hmm.
the electric bill's way cheaper because we have natural gas up here, and that's one thing. Up in the north where I am, the power grid's still pretty robust. We still have some coal-fired power plants. We have hydroelectric because of Mississippi, so we're doing pretty well as far as the ability to keep the lights on. I've only had one power outage, and I've lived in this area for 4 years, and it was very short, and it was an extremely bad, like lightning storm,
Mm-hmm.
thunderstorm.
Right.
So we've got it. I would say that it makes it a little bit easier, but also when you've got hard winters, you've got a community that comes together. It's actually a conversation I was having today with someone else. Was the guys in the south and the mid, I'd say mid states that are dealing with the snow right now, I don't think that they have the same mentality when it comes to, I don't want to say it negatively, but in a way, we have a stronger sense of community here because of the hard winters.
Right.
We
Right.
deal with ice and snow for several months. And so when you see someone that's on the side of the road that's having a hard time, a lot of times you pull over. If especially, well, it depends on where you are.
Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
major freeways, probably not. But out in the back country, on the rural roads in town, someone's having an issue, you're going to go check on them.
Right.
I've done it several times. Midwinter up north, my buddy's cabin, there's somebody pulled over on the side of the road. I'm like, I pull over, I get out. Hey, how you doing? You okay? You need a bottle of water? You need to make a phone call? And usually everything's okay, but
Mm-hmm.
we just do that for each other up here. I've had it happen for me too.
Yeah.
So
That happens in Indiana as well because I lived up in Indiana for a while, and that's a similar. Even in the highways, they do the same thing, and snow's out there all the time. I was driving a four-door sedan back then, and I have no idea how I never got trapped, but I survived. People kept water in their cars for that situation. They kept a little food supplies. They kept some other stuff. One of the things that I ended up doing up there that I kept with me, and I also started camping in the snow. I camped in the cold. I was substantially younger and more stupid, so I enjoyed that a little more. Is stove products. I was looking at better stove-craft and better bushcrafting materials. Things like there was oh, I can't remember the guy's name. He was on one of those shows, Dual Survivor, and he made like a survivalist store for a while, and he had some really good pots that you could use with any kind of stove, whether it was an alcohol stove, etc. And I ended up getting one of that. Fast forward now, while I still travel for work quite a bit, right now I'm trying to stay in the southern states where the fiance is and everything else, make life a little bit easier. I ended up getting a thing called a Kelly kettle, which is an 1800s survival tool slash traveling tool that was a big deal in Europe. I think it was 1800s, early 1800s, and it is basically a Dakota hole that you put small twigs in the base of, and you point the vent where you're pushing the twigs in towards the wind pushes into the hole and keeps the air going, and it exhausts through a basically a water jacket, a kettle that's shaped like a donut all the way to the top. And they got a little whistle attached to it, and it comes with little supplies and a grill and everything else. So you can do a whole bunch of food prepping and everything else on it. And I've used it in the summer to cook little sandwiches when we go out hiking and stuff like that. It is not something that I would say take this out in the field and survive in your little LPOP, blah, blah, blah. It's a little too big for that, but it is something that I think is a good backup, especially for traveling people or your average camper, glamper kind of style thing that also can be used at home. And it does produce enough heat. I was up there, it was 16 degrees. I had my gloves off, I had my hat off. I did have proper winter wear out, skiing wear, but I was warm as hell around that. So I also love a good wood stove and cast iron pans, and I got screwed up there. I think an antique store sold me a Wagner and didn't know that there was literally holes right through the Wagner, and the person who sold it to him had made sure the grease looked like steel, blackened steel, and I put a toothpick through a hole. So a little bummed about that, but for $20, I should have expected something weird was going on. Anyways, let's continue. X, you want to continue on to this?
Yeah, let's. I think you brought up a good topic that's worth kind of touching on for a second, and that's cold weather prep while you're traveling. I think we've kind of hit on. Hey, look, you're at your house, you're at the home base, you've got your supplies, you've got your friends and family and neighbors. That's your safe space, we'll call it. But when you're in your vehicle and you're on the road and you get caught up in these 27-hour, disasters where the whole highway is blocked because there's an 18,000 car pileup, like what do you do? And of course, you need to be prepped for that. certainly you should have some type of cold weather go bag. You need to have, if you can fit like a wool blanket in your truck, obviously your personal protective devices. Everybody knows what we're talking about there. What do you guys think about obviously food and drink, water and snacks, the non-perishable stuff, but the little what are they, emergency blankets, the little foil blankets that come in a little teeny pack? I keep a couple of those on me. What do you guys think about having that?
I guess I'll start with this because I played with these almost nonstop for about 2 years. Those Mylar sheets, if you know how to use them, are phenomenal. If you don't know how to use them, they're absolute trash. And most people don't know how to turn themselves into a burrito. The one thing I've learned with those is if you turn them at an angle, so instead of having a rectangle, you kind of turn them so they're at your feet and at your head, and you wrap yourself up like a burrito. So you fold the corner in over your feet and you fold the sides in, especially if you have a whoopee to go along with that. It really does effectively retain heat. You can also use it for a whole bunch of other things. We made, what was it? It's polycryo. I always forget the name of it, but I know a lot of people up north use it to seal their windows up, especially like people with old houses and they don't have like double pane windows that are real good sealant. They'll polycryo their windows, and I think you take a heat gun and you seal it. You can take those Mylar blankets and you can make a lean-to, and then you can put a polycryo sheet in front of that, and you can actually set a fire outside of it. The fire radiates the heat to the Mylar, reflects it down on you. If you're up on a pad of branches, it works fine, and that clear sheet of plastic allows all that heat in without letting it escape, and it gets fairly warm there. It'll keep you alive. Mando?
Yeah, we've used them hunting when we've gone deer hunting and use them to either lay on top of or lay underneath, and they help a little bit. I've not used them in that particular situation, but I know that they're effective against the wind too. So that's extremely helpful because obviously, like I'm a little more cold acclimated. I don't mind it. I'm a bigger guy. I got a full beard, like bother me. I've been walking around out here. It's 15, 18 degrees in a hoodie and walking shoes and a baseball cap, and I'm fine. But my wife would be freezing to death. So we've used them for that. And I do keep them for the reasons you guys have both expressed. But I also have a 5-star Alts poncho, which is basically a modified wool blanket. It's a USGI wool blanket, basically, and they're so cool. If you guys haven't seen them, you should check them out. 5-star Alts number 5, and I've used that just to sit with. So that usually goes with me in a vehicle. But we actually have cold weather kits. I usually don't put them in the vehicles until it gets really cold. So it's basically a clear tote that you can get at Sam's Club or Costco or Walmart or whatever. And I've got a sleeping bag and I keep candles, and the bottled water is smart because even if it's frozen, what we can do is if we're stuck in a snowbank, climb in the sleeping bag, put the water bottles in the sleeping bag. Your body heat will melt them enough where you can get some water off of them. Candles are going to keep you from freezing to death because even that little bit of flame will keep the vehicle from freezing. The other thing is because, and some people that don't live in these climates may not know this, but you might. You don't want to run your vehicle if you're stuck in a snowdrift because what happens is the fumes actually come back in the car and you'll suffocate. Even if you have your window cracked, you're going to suffocate. You're going to die. You're going to asphyxiate
Great
from.
point. Great point.
So when we're talking about situations like this, you want to have some alternative. And if you can just turn the car on for a second and crack the window just enough to let any of the fumes out from the candle, that's all you need. And you might not even need to do that. But if you got smaller people in the car, it's probably a good idea. Just to have a little bit of a draft. It doesn't have to be much, it's a quarter inch or less. And then the candles also act as a beacon. So if you can get out and you get a window wiped off, well, now there's a light. And so I was in one of the major snowstorms on the East Coast prior to my deployment to Afghanistan in the mid 2010 or 2008, 9 or something, I don't remember. And I actually was called up on state duty. I got put in a Humvee, driving all over the state, driving through giant snowbanks that were coming up to the hood of the Humvee, pulling people out of snowbanks and stuff like that. I remember particularly there was these three little guys that were stuck in a like Honda Civic style or something like that on the middle of the major freeway that runs through the state, and we pulled them out, got them in the Humvee to get them warmed up, and these guys had nothing. They didn't have any winter clothes, nothing. So thank God we came along and we could plow through that snow. And then about a half hour later, here comes the snowplow trucks, and we were able to get them back and get their car dug out, get them back in their car, and get them on the way. But they were hand digging out their pipe, their exhaust pipe, so that they wouldn't suffocate, because it wasn't up to the windows yet for them at that point. But it was still like dangerous that if they had to shut that off, they could get very, very cold. And so let's talk about I want to kind of pivot here now. So you're stuck in your car or you have to get out for some reason. And I've been up north in very bad storms. Even when I was a kid, I remember my dad's driving and he's the one leading the pack, and he pulled over thinking the people behind him were going to go past him, and they pulled over with him. He was the one leading, like they were following him. He's the only taillight they could see. So think about having to get stuck and get out and go for help. Let's talk about what you're going to be wearing. And I think socks are probably one of the most important things, and gloves are probably second. Right now, I usually just take a thin pair of gloves with me, and to wear, because I'm not out that much. And if I am, I'm usually moving, or I can stick my hands in the pocket. But I also have heavy winter gloves that can go over those. But socks are really important, and gloves, because if your feet or your fingers get cold, you stop thinking about other stuff. You're not thinking about, am I wet? Am I sweaty because I'm working hard? And if you get sweaty and then you stop, now you're going to freeze. So I buy from Bison Wool Company. I've been buying these Bison wool socks. And I've been walking, it was 15 degrees here the other day, and I was walking in my summer tennis shoes with these Bison socks on, and my toes were toasty warm. So even if you're not necessarily going to wear them, you definitely want to have them if you're going to put them in a kit. So that's typically another thing that goes in the kit. You could put a shovel in your vehicle, but I don't, because I figure if I'm at the point where the roads are that bad, I shouldn't be out anyway. And if I'm going to get stuck, that little shovel isn't going to do me any good. So turn it over.
I'll add to that. I think Fox River makes some really good socks as well. And those, I've had those for over a decade. Those were the socks I took to Afghanistan, to Iraq, and they last forever. I've heard really good stuff about Alpaca, the Bison, not specifically your company yet, but I'll check those out. I will say that I think a shovel's actually useful for multiple reasons. One, a lot of guys carry these shovels when they go off roading in the first place. And you can pick your shovel. I think the trifold from the U.S. military is okay. It's not the best. I can't stand the damn thing. I go with the Cold Steel Spetsnaz shovel. It's actually a Russian made shovel. I actually have a titanium version of that too. And the reason why I say that is because the shovel is good for cutting things down, and that will get you out of a bind if you know what you're doing, have a little bit of rope in your car. You can get your car out of a lot of spots, and having a four-door sedan for so many years with no four-wheel drive has helped me get out of mud and other things, including some snow. Back in the day, we went out camping, and I parked there, and it snowed way more than I thought we would, and I got stuck. But on the topic of getting hot and then getting cold, that is absolutely something that for people who are definitely in the areas that I was probably in, you don't think about because you walk back in the heat. It was cold as hell up there after I went skiing because I was sweating and everything else. I normally, most of the time, wear synthetic clothing, so if I sweat, it wicks away. I do that because I'm in the summer down here most of the time, sweating my ass off, and a lot of construction clothes are going that way, and they're getting away from cotton for that reason too. But when that cold hit me, I was freezing to death, and I had set up my fiance with really good synthetic clothes, this, that, gloves, made sure she was set, and I was like, oh, I'm tough. And to be fair, I'm far more cold resistant than her. I was born in Colorado. I lived in Nebraska during the snowstorm. They had a huge snowstorm between 82 and 84. There was a 106.8 inches of snowfall in Omaha over 2 years. And they had power outage for 2 weeks, a whole bunch of other nonsense that went on during that time. So I'm like, oh, I'm good. Well, I wasn't because we went skiing. I had a cotton shirt on and I got sweaty. You can't take your clothes off at a ski resort and put them somewhere easily. So I was just like, I'll be fine. Well, got in the car, and yes, the car has heat and everything, but I was cold for a little bit. I was colder than she was, and she's like, I want to turn the heat down. I'm like, I'm freezing to death. And that's something a lot of people don't think about. I think about it when I'm hiking and doing other stuff, especially in the winter months, but you don't think about that when you're doing fun stuff and then you, oh shit, the power's out. Oh shit, this is. And now I'm cold, wet, and have no power. Honestly, I love that you talked about the car stuff and dying inside your car because that happens every year with people out there. They'll leave the car engine running. We as a society have gotten away from common sense and basic knowledge that we should have how to start a fire. Most people I know can't start a fire. I've met more people that have guns, ammo, sometimes food and stuff like that, but they can't produce a fire. And I'm like, how the hell are you going to eat your food unless it's all MREs and you want to eat cold MREs or just use the little water fill packs? How the hell are you going to do any work? And then there's the other community of people who think they're going to boil every drop of water on the planet, and that's not feasibly possible with the amount of wood around. Again, that's also why I like the Kelly kettle.
Yeah. I'll tell you something, G. Another thing that bugged me is when the water went out, you lose access to flushing toilets. And of course, we had snow, and my method was not to obviously use my drinking water to flush the can, but to go out with a shovel and a big bin and just fill it up. I kind of stockpiled it on my back deck, and then I had a big metal pot like that I would use for a big soup pot, and I would fill that thing up with snow and not boil it, but just heat it up to melt it. Let me tell you something. It takes a long time to process snow just to get enough to flush your toilets. That is not productive time. That is time that you have to spend standing over the stove that you could be doing literally anything else that's better. Because even in the house, it would not melt. My house wasn't cold, but it wasn't hot enough to melt the water quickly. So, again, just remembering that if the water stops, you can still use your toilets. You can still do that. And if we were smart enough, and I was not because I wasn't thinking about it at the time, I didn't realize that the water was going to go out, but like our ancestors would have done, LOL, fill up a bathtub. And now you've got water not to take a bath, really not to even drink, but just to use to fill the toilets so that you can continue to maintain hygiene, which I think is going to be one of those topics we talk about in the coming days here when we get our cadre back. But another thing, just making sure you have somewhere to use the restroom, somewhere to get your waste away from the work that you're doing, from your life. So,
Hey, gee, you remember in the summer the post when I said something blew up? Remember that?
Vaguely, yes.
I just posted something blew up, and you're
Yeah.
like, what happened? And I had a
Yeah.
dream that something blew up, right? And so later that day, we had one of the electrical lines up here, one of the boxes just popped. Actually, two of them did. It was one and then another. I heard it explode, and the power went out instantly. I was working from home that day, and the first thing I did, I just remember this because X mentioned it. The first thing I did is I went and I filled up the bathtubs because I thought for sure, oh shit, here we go, this is it. The balloon just went up, right?
Yeah.
Filled both bathtubs, and I started running water off into a 5-gallon bucket because I knew I was like, okay, I got 2 girls here at home. I got to take care of them. I got dogs, so I've got to have water. It was, and at that time I hadn't done what I've done now with timing off my walk. The other thing that I did too is I went and bought some of those stackable water containers. They're 7-gallon water containers. They're blue. One of the guys on Colonel Murray's show, he does a situation report. He also does a roundtable. He said you got to have at least minimum 15 gallons of water. So I think I have 28 that I store, and I'll rotate it. I use it as for dog water. But for water storage, if you're going to do long-term water storage, there's this stuff called Ion. They're droplets, and it's like 5 drops per gallon or something like that. You have to read the instructions, but that stuff is super effective. You can basically store water almost permanently in clean containers with that. It's basically an ionized type of liquid, but it's water safe. It's better than bleach. So that's one thing to look at if you're going to be putting something in your vehicle. And remember, with water expands as it freezes. So if you're going to put containers in your vehicle, you don't want to put full containers because they'll crack and pop and then they'll melt and there'll be water everywhere, if nothing happens. The other thing is do not get gallon jugs like you get milk, like gallons of milk at the store, because the jugs actually deteriorate. The seams deteriorate very, very quickly. You want something that has better plastic. If you're going to use plastic, which, makes sense, that's more like a 2-liter bottle that soda comes in or pop comes in, like Pepsi or whatever. You can even use those. I've done that in the past. And when you want to talk about water and heat, one thing you can do too is if you're storing water and you heat up the room that the water's in, the water is going to retain heat, so your house will retain heat longer. So that's one other thing you could do is if you're doing this type of stuff anyway, if you're storing the water, store it someplace where it's going to stay warm, and then it's going to keep that heat pushing into your home for a little while longer. So those are some up north stuff you can think about. The covering your windows is absolutely really, really smart idea. Especially if you have drafty windows, if you're worried about it in the wintertime, just do it. Just get in the habit of doing it every year. The kits aren't that expensive. So if, let's say we have something happen here and you don't have a wood stove, you don't have the money to get a wood stove installed, there's a couple other things that I've gone through that can work pretty well for you. One is you can just get ceramic pots and fire brick, and you can make a small semi wood stove that would work. And what you do is you set it up on a something metal, like a painting bench, and you can take cans of like tuna cans and fill it with the oil G you were talking about, alcohol basically, and you can light those and it'll warm up the bricks, and that can help keep your room warm. Just the candles can do that too. But the other things is if you have a tent, you can pitch a tent inside your house. Pitch the tent in your living room, move this table out of the way or whatever it is you've got, and then get your sleeping bag and your sleeping stuff and get inside that. And your body heat now has a second layer that you can push against with the heat. And then that way you might not freeze to death. The other thing too is if something does happen in the cold, like I said, make sure you shut off your water. You may have to go outside and dig out your water main and shut it off, because if your pipes freeze, when they unfreeze, you're going to fill your water up with your house up with water. Excuse me.
Yeah, a lot of houses have a main shut-off valve underneath of them. If you have a crawl space, it's typically, not always, but typically right inside of the door to the crawl space. I know mine is. It's just a big valve. You can turn it off and shut the water off to your whole house if you need to. Didn't have to do that this time. Just wanted to protect the electrical stuff. And again, I'm back online. Thanks for your concerns. Everything's fine here. How are you? But beyond all that, yeah, I love that idea. Well, here's another one. I think somebody said making sure they had water for their pets. I've got animals, so they're my concern when it comes to this process. Not having water was a concern just because of the heads to feed, so to speak. Thankfully, I don't have a lot of big animals, so it wasn't too much work for me, besides me, of course. But, making sure that your animals are protected from the cold is also important, too. Like, for example, you've got a dog, he's part of your family. You've got a guard dog, he is part of your family and part of your security system. You've got animals that provide food, like chickens, or you got a milk cow or goats or something that's providing you food on a regular. You need to make sure you take care of them, because at some point when the weather clears back up, you're going to want that product that they produce for you. So one thing I found, because again I'm in a sort of suburban situation, I have a little bit more of a farmer's attitude than I probably should have right now, but it's a good thing. Making sure that my chickens didn't freeze to death, because it was windy and it was cold, which that's not so bad for mini breeds because they're pretty good about being cold hardy. But then the snow got wet. And when a chicken or any animal gets wet and cold and covered or hit with the wind, they will die. So I'll tell you what I did, guys. I went to my local hardware store and I got some tarps. Again, just the regular brown and silver tarps. But I made sure to get the ones that are 10 mils thick. Not the little cheap thin stuff that you get like at the Harbor Freight, like the 5 mil or the 3 mil or whatever. It's like super thin plastic. But get the heavy duty stuff. And what I did was I covered their coop with a couple of those. I took two to make sure that they were nice and tucked in. And it's an interesting experiment. You're out in the yard, you lay a couple tarps over a coop or over yourself. You're out there, let's say it's really windy and cold and you want to see how heavy duty this stuff is. Take two 10 mil tarps, I think mine's are 10 by 12. Throw them over your head or crawl up under there with the chickens for a few minutes, and you'll realize just how much of a difference two 10 mil layers of plastic will do. It stops the wind completely, it stops the cold significantly, and thankfully, I mean, all my chickens are still, surprisingly, still laying eggs, and I'm actually trying to let them take a break, but they're still being productive right now. So you definitely want to make sure you've got enough supplies for yourself, your family, the other humans. Obviously, human beings come first, but you've got to take care of your animals too. So what do you guys think about that?
I love that you have chickens. My fiance actually had one of Trump's grandsons come by to see their little farm. Now they have a small little farm. It's I think big cows, sheep, chickens, and all that stuff. They'd just gone to a zoo, one of those wild animal. Think Tiger King, but better, cleaner, not that kind of crazy stuff. None of the weird, crazy gay stuff going on. They'd gone to that, and then the kid came out and saw the little farm going on, and he sells eggs. Well, eggs recently have been hard to get down here. I don't know about the rest of you guys. I know with the bird flu and all that fear and panic, it's been lacking since we went out. We went on vacation up in North Carolina. I grabbed eggs up there. I didn't think much of it. I was like, oh, the eggs are a little light, and I had not been paying attention to all the news. The Vegas attack happened then. The Louisiana attack happened then. All the other nonsense was going on. I got some of that. Thankfully, I have a community of people that kind of keep me abreast of the situations. And at the time, I didn't think, man, what do I do for food? Where are the eggs? So we were okay. I ended up throwing away eggs, and I feel like an idiot now doing that. But you're on vacation. You get rid of your stuff. The Mylar blankets you talked about, any kind of tarps, polycryo, that stuff, anything to break wind, just makes your life so much better. I will add to this a little bit more because we are talking more on I'm going to call it a nonpartisan evening, which I think is good. One of the big things that a lot of people do is go ammos, guns, bullets, maybe beans, and then we tend to forget about water. And Mando was making a point about all the water he's storing and everything else, and X has brought that up too. The average for in the summer, according to the U.S. Army's logistical plans, is about 25 gallons or 3.5 gallons of water in the summer. In the winter, it comes down substantially, but you still need almost 2 gallons. Now, that includes cooking food, cleaning, bathing, and obviously the U.S. military's idea of bathing is like heating up a small cup of water and washing your nuts. But it's all that clothing, all that other stuff. So you don't always need that much water, but it's still something very important. And when you get to that point, you don't have all these materials, you start going, where the hell am I going to get it? And that's something I actually wrote an article recently about some plastic cards that I keep that came from Nick Meacher. He also has something else. Now, I'm not telling you guys to go run out and get this book. I think it's a very good book. It's the same book that was set up by my parents, who were firefighters. They were out in Colorado, Nebraska, other places, Illinois. And when they got together, they wrote up an emergency plan for the family. And this was common practice. The civil defense had something like that. Well, he's got his own variation of it. And he goes through and puts out certain emergencies for certain reasons. He's got a coded color plan saying, hey, I've got this kind of emergency, go here. The one thing he did on this was he put in rally points. So if you're out traveling, you get stuck, you don't end up coming home. What are your rally points? Stuff like that, or you have to go somewhere. And it's got simple stuff like where are your doctors? And this is nice for families. Maybe the husband works all the time. The wife goes out, takes the family doctor. Maybe you don't know all the doctors your wife's going to. And you put that in the book. You mark the hospitals, the urgent cares around you, the pharmacies, veterinary clinics, utilities, just contact information for them, maybe your account numbers and all that other stuff. And you get more of that information together. He's got churches in here. Obviously, I think that's a great thing because the churches are going to be a segue to that, fire stations, etc. We forget because a lot of us that are going to be listening to this are thinking when the world starts ripping apart like South Africa right now, and it is horrible down there. If anybody follows Canine Reaper, he posts all the videos of all this stuff. They are literally breaking into crypts to steal not just jewelry off of dead people, but some of the materials that the crypts are made out of to go sell to make a few extra dollars. That's how bad South Africa is. We in the US are absolutely protected, and as bad as North Carolina is, as bad as the fires in California is, there are people to help you. And if we have those assets, it's nice to know where they are instead of, oh, hey, the power's out, I have no water, who do I contact? And that also falls into maybe I should have radios so I can get on GMRS or maybe a ham band to talk. That's a whole other topic that we'll probably hit on eventually too. But that's something the North Carolina people had a problem with. And I saw the devastation there. There are still buildings in the Boone area. I'd go to this coffee shop called Camp Coffee. And the guy who runs it last name is Campbell. He's a military guy. Super good place. If you're going to go to Blowing Rock, go get his coffee. He's got a Baghdad coffee. I'll tell you what, being cold and having a nice warm cup of anything is phenomenal. That coffee made my day. But as we were driving to go enjoy ourselves, you saw the devastation there. You saw the financial woes. I've talked to the people in the area who were back on their feet, and they got some support, but they're still lacking. I met a guy who was taking photographs, and he happened to be one of the guys who took photos for a website, and I love to quote who it is. I think it starts with an ST. Scout has his knives, I believe, or has sold his knives. And he comes out to the scout camp for the recce and the scout course sometimes and sells his knives. They're all hit, but he took all the photos. He's like, man, I lost $5,000 worth of work because he does wedding photos and stuff like that too. So that place got hit, and a lot of those people weren't prepared for a lot of this. And they didn't go, where's my connections? Where's my contacts? Who can I contact to get help? And sometimes it's not, we're going to be an island unto ourselves with all the water, like X. You got your setup, you don't have water, but the reality is you probably had access to water from some municipality if you really needed it. You need to take care of yourself. Don't get me wrong, I love that. That's why we're here. That's why we're friends. But it's also nice to know when you have a regional disaster where the hell to go.
Yeah, it's one of those things where this was a good test run for me. This was a good wake-up call for me. And I'll even take you back, I don't know who it was saying, but I'll take whoever was back a step and say, the cold weather will kill you just as fast as a bullet will. You know, if you're not prepared and you get stuck out lost in the woods in the cold, you're probably going to die. And whoever finds you is going to find your sweet optics and your really cool rifle and that cool, new pair of boots that you picked up that looks super high speed, low drag, but you froze to death. You know what I mean? So let's just remember, we've got several adversaries here in any sort of partisan mindset. We've got to deal with, the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and as part of the physical, nature itself can be an ally or an enemy, depending on how well we're prepared. So I just encourage everybody, look at yourself, take a few minutes, walk around the house, think about yourself, think about your animals, your neighbors. Do you have a plan in place? Do you have means to access clean water? Do you remember that you got to boil it, you can't just drink out of a stream? Are you stocking water bottles up somewhere? If you're going to long-term store, are you properly storing it so it's not going to go bad? Just like you would take care of your socks and your boots and your guns and all your other cool high speed stuff. You got batteries, make sure you got your lighters like we talked about, but just take stock of your situation. And here's the best part about this lifestyle. You don't have to have it all figured out today. But what you can do today is just do one more step, one more prep, one more item. Oh, hey, maybe I should, every time I go to the grocery store, grab an extra Bic lighter. Maybe I should grab an extra 100-hour candle. Guys, your grocery store, like a Food Lion here on the East Coast, like you can go to any basic grocery store and get matches and lighters and little survival candles and little sterno stoves and stuff like that. Like you can get one or two things every time you go in there to get your ho-hos. No offense, Mando. You can go in there and get your goodies.
burn.
I can't eat those anyway.
I know, they're terrible. Yeah, you can go in the grocery store and get some very basic stuff. You know, they might even have firewood out in front. Not that you should go buy it because it's going to be more expensive that way. If you can get it locally, do that. But you can buy a bag of firewood at like, what is it, grocery store? What, Kroger's? It's like a grocery store that has like a gas pump thing. Sometimes they have bags of firewood, like 4 or 5 pieces of firewood in a bag.
North Carolina had firewood in
Yeah,
every
just-
single gas station.
Yeah, I
every
mean, you
single
can find
place.
this stuff at like Tractor Supply. They probably got wood for sale. They get a couple bags of wood, just whatever. But just start now, guys and girls. Just start now. I guess is what I would say.
And I think
Here's
that's
a-
right.
Here's a little. If you guys haven't seen the movie Jeremiah Johnson, I had to Jack, being of sound mind and broke legs, to leaveth my bear rifle to whomever, whatever finds it. It is a good rifle and killed the bear that killed me. Anyway, I am dead. Yours truly, Hatchet Jack. So in that
Classic.
movie,
Classic.
he walks up on a dead guy and steals a rifle from him. So don't be a loot drop in the cold. Is basically the point.
What?
Like-
Oh God, is this going to be
Right.
the new motto of this show? Hey,
Don't be a
welcome-
loot drop.
welcome to Comment Off the Shelf. Don't be a loot drop.
You'll be a-
Oh my goodness,
It's gonna be that'll be my tagline.
that's
I'm
your
taking
tagline.
it.
Mine
I'm
is always
claiming it.
keep your
Don't be-
trench shovel sharpened for the Emperor.
Yeah, that's right. Well, having a shovel in the cold.
Yeah.
We did talk about that. I wanted to mention I like the Glock one because it folds up and it's got a plastic handle, so it's quite a bit lighter. I've got a couple of them, so if you were gonna pick one, that would be the one that I would go with to keep in your vehicle.
The only reason why I don't like the folding ones is because it's a point of failure. And don't get me wrong, there's some good ones. I had one as a kid that was from Korea, and I have no idea what my mother did with it when my father died. But it was a folding one with a shovel on one side and a pick on the other. It was apparently from the Korean War. I didn't know it at the time, and now I really regret not having it. I've looked for it in a lot of the, and we go antiquing. I try to find cast iron pans because that's my preferred way to cook, and other things. Just whatever. There's a lot of stuff that we miss out that as a prepping community that worked back in the day that still works now, that may be versatile. And a lot of conveniences have come along the way. How many people now have auto start cars or remote start cars, heated seats up in the north? You don't see that stuff down in Florida too much, although the auto starts are kind of nice in the hot weather. But that stuff is convenience, and we got all this stuff, but a lot of antiques are designed because there were no conveniences at the time. So it's something to look at sometimes.
I like the heated seats and the auto start. I was gonna say something too. When it comes to layering, you've got to know how your body's gonna react depending on the weather conditions. So for me, I get I get warm fast. Again, I'm acclimated to the weather. I'm usually out in the cold. It doesn't bother me. So if I put a thermal on under a jacket, usually that thermal is getting taken off at some point, or sometimes I'm losing the jacket and I'm going to a vest instead of having that second full set of sleeves on. And when I was younger, it was driven into my head that you can't put layers on, but you can take layers off. I actually don't think that's true. If the conditions are bad, it's not a good idea, because now let's say you're in driving snow, you're going to get wet, and that's worse. But if it's just cold and windy and you are getting too warm, you can stop and take stuff off. But if you're not warm enough, if you're fast, you can stop, strip your heavy top layer, and put on a lighter or a mid layer or something like that, and then
Right,
put your other
right.
layer back on. So you can do it now. It's harder with bottoms, with pants. And so one thing that sometimes I'll do is I'll just deal with being hot from the waist, too hot from the waist down, and just put the thermals on, and then just take off on the top, take your hat off, whatever. But if you're worried about it, take that extra layer because the weight is not that bad. And what's going to happen is if you're moving and then you stop, you're going to want to put that back on, especially if it's even the slightest breeze. Today it was 28 degrees with 0 wind, but it would occasionally get 6 miles an hour. And the tips of my ears were getting cold walking around. And I was like, okay, I could use a hat right now walking into the wind. And if I
Good warm
stopped,
beanie.
yeah, if I stopped, I would get cold. I just put
Yeah.
my hood up. But
Oh
if
yeah, nice
but
hoodie.
yeah, step out of the wind. But if I had to stand somewhere for a while, I probably would have got cold, but I was moving and I was okay. So, layering up is good, and depending on your body type, you may want to think about putting a layer on the bottom that you're not going to be able to get off as easily, and then work off the top. Because at one point I got so warm that I actually just took my baseball cap off too, because the heat in your body goes out your head and your feet. If your feet are enclosed and in good socks and shoes, then you're going to stay warm. And then if you put a hat on, you're going to stay warmer. So the first thing you can do is you can take the lid off, and that'll let some heat escape off the top. People make fun of me because I'm bald, and in the cold, if I start sweating, I steam. It actually steams off my head.
You're not the only one at all. I do the same thing. Obviously, I'm bald too. The nice beard. The one thing you were talking about is pulling stuff off your head, and this is something Wendigo works. I'm definitely going to do a podcast about you guys, especially your split rig. I've already done an article. Love that thing. It's one of my favorite pieces of material. And your chest rig, my God, that's a great little scout thing. That said, you guys just did a scrim thing for helmets. I challenge you, because you guys are out in Utah. It's cold as shit out there. I know. I think I drove in there with feet of snow. So you guys probably in the snow right now. There is a skiing hoodie. It's not a hoodie, it's not a full jacket, but it's a hood that you can put over a helmet. And it's designed for helmet wear to protect your head and your helmet. That may be something you guys out at Wendigo Works might want to look at, because the only ones I could find were black. Because when I saw that, I got it for my fiance. She wore it out skiing. It was phenomenal. She could pull it back just like a normal hoodie. The only thing that kind of sucked is it pulled up around the neck, and she got cold around the neck from it. But that layering of your head, the layering of your body, phenomenally good suggestion. And while I don't usually wear a helmet everywhere I go, even in the foreseeable future of a apocalypse world where there's zombies and all that crap, you may have to wear a helmet for certain things, night vision, thermals, etc. And you might want to keep warm. And that might be something. So Wendigo Works, if you hear me, if you, God forbid, listen to us idiots talking, maybe that's something you look into and sell it next winter. But yeah,
What was it again? What was it again?
It was a hoodie built for. It was like the hoodie neck part from the neck up with a face mask built for skiers to go over their helmets. And it was like a giant hoodie, not like a normal hoodie like sweatshirt, but it was a big one that would go over your stuff. I know the Russians have something like that too, because I've seen them, or maybe the Ukrainians both have them.
Just the hood.
Have one.
Just
It's
the
just
hood
a
part.
hood. It goes into your neck, around your collar. You pull it down around there. It was a fleece material that they used, but it was solid black. And I think that'd be cool for our niche of the world. Plus, honestly, think of all the military gear. I have most of my winter wear is military gear, whether it's OPFOR Russian gear that I had or the U.S. Army's marshmallow suit, which, man, if you want to get cheap, wait until the summer, go buy yourself a marshmallow suit if you're going to go live in the winter, and then have the long john layer and some clothes. Spot on, will keep you warm through most everything, especially with the outerwear, some kind of rain shell.
Up here, the Carhartt stuff's really good
Oh,
because
yeah.
they make it where you can go heavy or you can go thinner, but it's better wind protection. So I have a pair of pants that I keep with me that if it's really really windy, I'm just gonna put those pants on. I don't necessarily need a second layer. But if you want to go a little bit less overt, you can just get fleece lined jeans. I have a pair of those as well. Obviously, the cotton, you may get wet. So there's that to worry about. But the thing that I actually just have been thinking about, it's funny that we're doing this today because I was thinking about this. What are the Norwegians doing? And I don't say that just because I am one. I mean, my lineage, but also those guys are, that's some deep winter. And they have some really serious gear when it comes to cold weather. And they're out, the military guys, and they look comfortable.
The
So
Finnish do
that's,
too. The Finnish
yeah,
have phenomenal good
yep.
stuff. And that whole winter war with Russia during World War II, I've looked more into that. Obviously, I think the Fat Electrician did a whole thing about was it the White Death over there.
Zima Haya, yeah, the
Yeah,
White Death.
and that's a
So, yeah,
great
they're
story. But man, that guy was sitting there eating ice, putting water down to freeze the snow, so when you shot, the snow didn't puff up and all this other crazy stuff. But I was looking into his gear, and I haven't found a lot of information. I know the Russians do, honestly. Is as shitty as they are with their gear, they're built by the lowest bidder, which is lower than the Americans. Most of their winter wear is copies from the Swedes and the Finnish and everybody else. They just make it with like crappier materials. And they've got some good gear. I think you're good. I don't know who to look for in that, but that's something we probably should look into. And the clothing is definitely an interesting topic. I also want to point out that as much as I love military gear, I am very concerned about wearing military gear if the US starts to fall apart because it puts an automatic target on your head. And I am absolutely the biggest light bulb of stupidity when it comes to that because half my gear is civilian and half my gear is multiple foreign militaries plus obviously the American military. So it's something to think about if you're walking around and you're wearing military gear and it's cold out, somebody might decide you're a loot drop, and I think that's a good point to bring up.
up here. That, like where I'm at, that's not a thing. Everybody wears camo. I mean, that you're wearing, because we've got deer hunting that starts in September and goes through January. So people are wearing camo, and they're wearing all kinds of camo. You actually don't notice it. It's part of the attire up here in this part of the Midwest. But one of the things is the Carhartt stuff. They make camo versions, but they also just make the plain clothes guy, the gray man, quote unquote, which is I think overused. But anyway, but the only issue with that is I don't know what their signature looks like under night vision. I know that there was my pattern was at the class last year, and he was wearing a camouflage mossy oak style jacket, and when you looked at him under nods, he actually was it was just white or like bright gray. It didn't
Yep.
do anything as far as his camouflage signature under night vision. Now, if he stepped into the shadows and he wasn't out in the open, it was better. But that's one thing to consider is if you have night vision and you're going to get that stuff instead, is to take a peek at it, which I haven't done with all my stuff. But I was looking at some of my rifles and I was like, well, those are obviously different anodization, because one was like silver and the other one was black. So it's things to consider.
There are two other ways to help that. There is a camouflage paint for fabric, and I want to say it's CR400 or something. I'll look that up, and I would like to do a podcast specifically on camouflage materials and paints. But you can still paint gear to not be reflective, and one of the better ones out there, just if you have to hit it real fast and you want to go cheap and easy, is that camo paint from the stores generally do not have an IR reflectant signature. Also, the other problem that a lot of people do is they use fabric softeners and soaps that actually make your clothes glow. And it's supposed to bring out vibrant colors, which works just fine, but things like Woolite don't do that, and that's why the military during the whole Iraqi freedom and all that stuff were specific on what you should be using on your new uniforms when we transition.
Yeah, we were big on not using. I mean, again, a little off topic from the cold weather stuff, but yeah, we were big on making sure that our stuff was appropriate under different conditions. But yeah, I think kind of to bring us back full circle, just again, it's not too late, friends. Get started now. Get you extra case of water this time. Get you an extra Bic lighter. Think about how you can make heat. Think about how you can make water. Think about how you can eat. Very essential things, not complicated. But I think, I don't know if somebody was saying it, but the world that we live in today is filled with distractions. It's too easy when you're warm and comfortable and doom scrolling on YouTube to really prep stuff. So just take dedicate a day, Saturday afternoon is my prep time. Let me go to the store. Let me grab 2 or 3 extra things. It's not a big expense. There's really no excuse. You just can't be lazy. I hate to say it that way, but you just can't be lazy about it.
I totally agree, and something I was doing when I was up in Indiana, partly because I was really focusing on prepping and helping other people prep, even though I wasn't writing articles or I wasn't in said partisan community kind of style of areas. I was looking at more primitive stuff. Was I really looked at going to a Dollar General or something like that and picking up the bare necessities to stay alive. And you see this today. Granted, I'm down in the southern tip of Florida right now working. There is a lot of homeless that have moved by train down here to get the hell out of the cold, but they bring a lot of cheap, easy materials to survive. It still gets cold at night. It still gets cold in places, and that body temperature drop can be dangerous to specific people. I won't go into this too deep. I brought 2 friends over from Kuwait. One of them, we had prepped up, got nice sleeping bags and everything else. He didn't know how to sleep in a sleeping bag because he lived in the desert his whole life. He got out of his clothes. He slept on top of the sleeping bag. The temperature outside was like 70 degrees, and he started getting hypothermic because he never really experienced that. And 70 degrees to us is probably comfortable. I could sleep probably butt naked out in the woods in a hammock and feel totally comfortable. Hell, Mando might be sweating his nuts off at that point. He got hypothermic. We had to create hot water and do all that stuff for it. And it was simple tasks. We're out camping, trying to have fun. But those simple things, you don't think about. The simple things, the easy tasks. How do I stay alive tomorrow? And the reality is, even with partisan stuff we talk about, 90% of your life is how do I go to work? How do I make enough money to survive? How do I feed my family? Even if you want to do anything, all that stuff has to be taken care of first. And the biggest problem you're going to have is when your Sweat MC or Sweat IR, depending on which acronym you want to run, starts breaking down. Your sewer, your water, your electrical, transportation, all that stuff breaks down. How do you replace it? What do you do? Do you need it? Do you not need it? And that's one thing we were going to do, and I think I posted it, that we're going to do something on hygiene and poop and everything else. I said that on the last podcast. We are waiting for the man who wrote those articles, so we kind of divested over here, but I think this is a great topic. And this is one of those segues. This is a small portion of your life, cold weather, that you may have to deal with, even if you're in certain places like Georgia or South Carolina or Louisiana right now. It's getting cold there. Power goes out, what the hell do you do?
Yeah, well, guys, I appreciate the opportunity this evening. I think that's all that we had on the docket tonight. I'll just, again, tell everybody we're going to keep coming up with our favorite taglines, but keep your trench shovel sharpened, and we'll see you next time.
One thing before we sign off here, I want to mention is batteries. I ran into this recently. Got a laser aiming module for one of my rifles and threw it in the trunk of the car. Went to work, a few hours in the car, freezing cold, left it out there, didn't think about it, drove home, got out, went to move it or something, battery's dead. Just charged it. I know it was full charge. Think about that. Your batteries die in the cold. I think that's the most prevalent thing is when they're not being used is they die in the cold. So think about keeping extra batteries, or what are you going to do if the batteries are dead? We'll talk about this some other time, but backup iron sights and things like that. And other than that, don't be a loot drop.
Yeah, I guess I'll finish that off. I left for 7 days, left my truck, and came back, and my battery was dead. Thank God for warranties. It got a little cool down here, and I have had my battery die in the cold 3 times in the last probably 7 or 8 years. Just my car battery alone. So it's something you got to keep a look on. Guys, thank you so much. Mando, I appreciate you getting on. X, obviously, anytime I can get you on, I get you on. I know it was kind of a hot topic for a cold climate conversation, and everything else is burning from people in New York City to California. And I hope those people, as much as you may not like Californian politics, I hope they survive and the looting stops and they get their life back together, because that shit is terrible. But
Yeah, definitely praying for those folks, man. We don't want to see anybody suffer like that. If
They're all
anybody hears
American
about ways to help,
citizens.
yeah, absolutely. If there's anything we can do to help you guys, let us know.
all right, guys. Well, thank you for stopping by. Hopefully, we are going to have a poop conversation sooner or later. I'm waiting for Rabbit. He wrote 4 articles on that. I can't wait to have that conversation. It is a topic that needs to be discussed. I bought a book from the 1920s on how to make a septic tank and a sewage system for farms. I, for some reason, want to discuss that. And that man, and I'm sure you guys have some stories as well, being deployed and everything else and all that nonsense in the military and slit trenches and everything else. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Have a good evening.